Hi Donnachadh, what are we doing here today?
What we're doing here today is we're taking a single coffin down Oxford Street to Marble Arch and have a die-in. And that coffin is to represent all the people who are dying of Britain's culture of death around motorised traffic. Because the cyclists who are dying on the roads are just the canary in the mine shaft. Behind those dead cyclists are thousands of motorists, thousands of pedestrians, but even more importantly, there's around 50,000 people who are dying from traffic pollution, and 400,000 people dying because they have no access to safe cycling routes, so they can't exercise on the way to work. That's what we're doing today.
And what's it going to entail? We're starting here at Bedford Square, and then what?
The proposal is to take the horse-drawn hearse with the coffin and the protesters down Oxford Street on one of the busiest shopping days of the year to Marble Arch, and then under Marble Arch we'll place a coffin under the arch, and we'll have the 1,000 people lie down around the coffin to represent all those people living with terrible diseases as well as the dead from the last 10 years.
Hi Steve.
Hiya.
So you set up Stop Killing Cyclists a year ago.
That's
Why
right,
did you do that?
Because, well, cyclists were getting killed. It was initially in response to the spate of deaths we had at the beginning of November last year. 6 cyclists killed on London's roads in 2 weeks, and that prompted us to have a protest at Transport for London last year.
What came out of that? What happened?
Immediately after that, we were invited to have a meeting with TfL, and we've since had a couple more meetings with them to discuss the demands we made on that day.
Hi Lindsay, why are you here today?
I've come up from Brighton. I'm a cycling advocate in Brighton, and basically nationally we have a huge crisis where cycling is the best way to get around. It improves your mental, physical health. It gives a smile on your face, but it also stops us choking on fumes every day, and it just doesn't make any sense that we still use cars and buses and trains as much as we do. We should be moving towards sustainable forms of transport, and cyclists are still being killed, and we are discriminated against as a group of people who are just trying to get around and live our lives. And our responsibility is individualised. We're told that we should wear helmets if we don't want to die, and that's just a stupid way of thinking. If you want to protect cyclists and protect our way of getting around, then we need proper infrastructure.
Hi Chris, what brings you out here today?
We're joining the Stop the Killing demo here in Oxford Street, asking for a fundamental change in our culture about how we govern and police roads in London.
Now you've been involved in trying to do some of the campaigning on that side of things. What have you been doing?
Sure, I've been involved with a number of other individuals here in London on something called Cycling Works, encouraging large businesses in London, employers, to speak up for the right of their employees to get to work safely. And we've had over 160 businesses come out in the last 4 weeks, including the Financial Times, Unilever, Deloitte, Microsoft, Orange, many others. All very clear that they want their employees to be able to get to work safely, and backing the new north-south, east-west cycle superhighway.
What do you want to see happen come out of this event here today?
We're already seeing progressive boroughs in London adopt 20 miles an hour, and it's time now for an acceleration of that across both the city and frankly across the UK. Residential areas and areas with dense pedestrian populations, we should simply have 20 miles an hour across the way. We all need a fundamental change in how we investigate road violence and the consequences of road violence. We'd like to see a reduction in the number of heavy goods vehicles doing deliveries in the centre of town. Some parts of the shopping district here in London have done an amazing job of consolidating how many deliveries they get per day. But there are streets like Bond Street which have 53 different companies picking up commercial waste every day. That's 53 different trucks going to 100 different businesses. And if they behave more like businesses like Fortnum & Mason on Piccadilly, we'll start seeing a reduction in heavy goods vehicles in London.
Well, you're being very helpful. What are you doing there?
What are you doing here,
What do you got there? What have you got there? What do you got in your hands?
Stop killing. Look, traffic stop killing our kids, and just one says traffic stop killing removed.
Hi Louise, why did you come here to this event?
Well, I work in London and I live outside London, but I cycle every day in London on one of these Boris bikes, which is the hire bikes. and it's pretty dangerous. And I'm very concerned about cycle safety. But also I travel a bit in Holland, and I know what it could be like, and I dream of a day.
Well, tell me about what it's like there for you. How does it feel to be cycling there?
It is wonderful. I go over there once a year or so with my husband on a tandem bike. We go everywhere. There's never any fear, there's never any worry at all. No one wears helmets, because everywhere there's dedicated cycle lanes and everyone's very aware. So you see everyone cycling, you see people with small children, you see little old ladies with their electric buggies, you see disabled people on electric wheelchairs. You realise that everyone can just get around so much more easily.
But wasn't there a lot of opposition initially to try to create those lanes? Because that would take room away from other people that are trying to use the roads.
You mean in Holland?
In Holland, yes.
There was huge. Holland had the same situation in the 1970s that we did, and they had a huge protest movement called Stop the Killing of Children, because there had been such a huge road toll amongst children and adults in Holland, and so they had a huge political movement, and they started designing cars out and designing bikes in, and it worked.
But what was the reaction of the people that were used to using the roads, the bus drivers, the taxis?
I think they, in that sort of Dutch way, they were sort of persuaded by reason, because they realised that there's too many people, not everyone can drive, and if you have a situation where you can get around on a bike, you no longer need a car. You don't have to pay for a car, you don't have to risk a car, you don't get your car stolen. It just works for everybody. And the people who do drive, there's not so much traffic, so they can get around a lot easier than they would have otherwise.
Thank you very much for that.
You're
welcome.
Have
a good journey.
It depends where I'm getting placed.
Hi, Tom. What is it we're doing here today?
We are gathering for the national funeral for the unknown victim of traffic violence.
And what's that about?
That's about essentially calling an end to the addiction to the motor vehicle society we live in, and the casualties that result from it every single day, almost every single minute.
And you actually have first-hand knowledge of this. You were hit by a bus, is that right?
5 years ago I was hit in the head by a TfL bus, 15 tons. Head was cracked open, popped both my lungs, and I was reported as a fatal.
What happened next?
I shouldn't be here today.
Well, I'm glad you are.
I was saved by a 16-year-old kid from Hackney who had the courage to basically clean out my airways, put me in the recovery position, and wait by my side until the ambulance showed up a half an hour later. So at the single instance, I was probably the most unlucky I've been in my life. I was the most lucky.
Oh my goodness.
And I spent the next 2 weeks in a deep near-death coma and woke up in the new year.
Fast forward a little bit to what you do now to try to help make things better.
I think as a campaigner, my view is, having had my own experience and survived and been lucky enough to survive, I'm obligated to point out, one, the profound flaws in the system, especially connected to buses. I've been focusing on that because these are professional drivers and it's public money. So they're using our own money to kill us, and I think that's wrong. And I've worked with bus drivers, as well as obviously cyclists, to look at that particular issue, and my discoveries certainly is that TfL operates a fundamentally unsafe bus system.
That's Transport for London.
Yeah, I come from the mining industry, and I've been director of mines in South Africa, director of companies in the UK. And safety has to come first, not production, whereas TfL, its performance comes first. Lives are secondary. And if you had a company like that, private company in the United Kingdom, you'd be shut down, and the directors would be in jail. Meanwhile, TfL manifestly pursues a policy where buses run on time and are available at the cost of human life. And they know this, and they're doing nothing about it.
What do you hope to have happen after today's event?
What I want to do, essentially, is focus on my, obviously, personal issues, Oxford Street. Over 200 million people a year, soon to be 250 million people a year with Crossrail coming in, and 300 TfL buses an hour. Those buses at Oxford Street are empty. TfL could reroute them, or they could actually come up with a policy that promoted active travel, and a lot of those buses wouldn't be necessary. Instead, those empty buses are thrust at Europe's busiest shopping street and making it Europe's most polluted and most dangerous. And that's unacceptable. In one of the greatest cities in the world, Europe's largest city, Europe's busiest shopping street should be Europe's safest, not its most polluted and most dangerous.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Oh, my pleasure.
I put it up there,
Because then it rests on
then
the
it
light.
rests on the lights.
Can we get your name?
Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
What brings you here today?
Because I want roads that are a little bit like they were when I was a child for my grandchildren when I have them. I want to cycle safely as well, and I want to change the way people think about cyclists.
Where did you come up from today?
From Bournemouth.
From Bournemouth. You came all the way from Bournemouth for this event.
Yeah.
What do you want to see happen after the event?
I don't think anything's going to happen immediately, but I just think that hopefully little changes, little steps, which will make slowly become bigger. I mean, 2 children got knocked over at, outside school this week down in Bournemouth, and just people going too fast. So I would love it to be 20 miles an hour as well, inside, in towns, just to be safer for the kids, safer for everybody.
Thanks, Rachel. Have a great ride.
Right.
Hi, Rachel. What brings you here today?
I guess I'm here like many other cyclists from London because we want safer streets. I'm originally from the Netherlands where we have our own bike lanes, and that kind of is the way I think it should be, where people who have green ways of transporting themselves should definitely have priority and safer conditions.
So do you live here now in London, or?
Yeah.
You do. What do you think is the main difference? You say bike lanes, or are there other things that also make it a better place in the Netherlands?
Yeah, I guess the culture. I guess here there's a lot of a thing like you're either a cyclist and you've got to hate cars, or you're either a driver and you own a car and you've got to hate cyclists. Whereas in the Netherlands, like everybody has a bike. There are people who have a car, but they usually cycle if it's a short distance. It's just, I guess, a different approach to it as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is that a Dutch bike? Where's the basket?
No, it's not a Dutch bike actually. Sadly, I didn't bring that one over.
Hello. John, why are you here today?
I'm here just along with all these other people as a protest against all the massive amount of violent deaths and killings and injuries that have been caused by traffic, and the complacency of all our politicians and councillors failing to do anything about it. The real answer is we need to liberate our roads from the motor car, from the traffic. Give it back to the people, get people active again, get people cycling, getting people walking, getting people running, and restore some health to our population and take away the thing which is causing massive death and destruction.
Hi, Jenny. What brings you here today?
I've come here because people getting killed on the roads is something that happens every single day in Britain and here in London as well. And yet it's still not a problem that's perceived as a really big problem by politicians. So it's time that they understood that casualties, especially from hit and run who are criminals, and deaths on our roads are totally unacceptable. We should be going for a 0 death rate and a 0 casualty rate.
So what do you want to see happen after today's event?
Well, I think what we're doing here today is just making a point, and if a few more politicians who can actually do something about it will just listen a bit harder, then I think we can see a change. I mean, personally what I want to see is smaller roads. I think it's time for us to give roads back to people who are on foot and on the bikes, and we should say cars are not a solution in our city, they're actually a big problem.
Thank you.